Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of time here and work on my own version of Project 2. I'm going to do something that I had the idea to do last semester. I was teaching Photoshop in person, 2 classes of it, and I just didn't have time to work on this because I was in 2 classes, had double the grading, double the students, and never got a chance in class to work on it. Or I did very minimally. But so what I want to do is well, not recently, but I saw The Martian. I really liked the movie. Um, and I'm a big fan of sci-fi, stuff like that. So I decided I wanted to work with a Martian image. Okay, so there's my Matt Damon character. This is a pretty good quality screen grab that I found. If I look at this image, it is 17 inches by 10 inches at 300 dpi. Okay, so it definitely meets my 8 by 10 at 300 dpi resolution. It's 5400 pixels by 3000, which is plenty. What I decided I wanted to do was, when I was growing up, I was a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes. So what I think I want to do with this image is give it a treatment like Calvin and Hobbes. So if you don't know Calvin and Hobbes, it is a comic strip, okay? And it's all about this boy and his pet tiger, right? The kid is really smart, goes on adventures in the neighborhood with his pet tiger, and one of his characters that he pretends to be is this guy called Spaceman Spiff. And Spaceman Spiff was a kind of like 50s era space explorer, and so often he would be going to explore, these faraway lands or whatever, and that's how the comic starts, him exploring these lands. He crashes on some alien landscape, finds some kind of alien life. So in this example, these aliens are hauling him away to jail, and then they say, we're going to interrogate him and wash his hair. And the last strip is him in the bath where his mom is forcing him to wash, and she's all wet and a mess. But so I think Spaceman Spiff is like a really fun character, and what I want to do is give my image. Where's my image? Here's my image. I want to give my image the Spaceman Spiff treatment. So Bill Watterson, who is the artist that made Calvin and Hobbes, he sometimes did some really awesome kind of landscapes with his images with Spaceman Spiff. So this is a good example of one of those. It's got some really nice color, some very thick line quality, and the other thing he would do is he would have like this really nice landscape, and he would then include like this alien life that was really detailed. Okay, now I'm not going to include alien life in my image because obviously I don't have alien life there, but often some of the backgrounds would include, let's see if we can find an example. Okay, so Spaceman Spiff was always crashing his spaceship on the surface. So what I did was I found a copy of the rover that they used for the movie. That's this guy here. I'm going to include this in my image and I'm going to give it the same colors as his spaceship. Also, Spaceman Spiff was, let's see, that's that. That's not what I'm looking for. Just trying to find my browser again here. Did I close it? Did I close my browser window? There we go. I didn't close it, I just dragged it way off screen. Okay. So Spaceman Spiff had this blue outfit with yellow trim. His lander was red. Okay, you can kind of see some of the quality of the landscape here. Another good example. Let me see if I can find some really nice sized images of Spaceman Spiff. Here's an example of what the background looked like, but this is not Spaceman Spiff, obviously. There he is. Okay, he's got a blue outfit, yellow trim, red ship. And this kind of watercolor effect. Sometimes Bill Watterson would make the backgrounds with watercolors. Okay, so watercolor effect might be kind of nice here. There's not any real high resolution examples of Spaceman Spiff images, but there's one. This guy. Okay, so that's my inspiration here. I'm going to try to go for something like this with my image, and see if I can make it kind of feel like the cartoon. Okay, so I've got my image here. Obviously, I want to include this other image of my rover. Okay, I'm going to put these in a folder called Originals, and I'm going to keep those there and not mess with them, right? This one I can, well, it's in there as a smart object, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to start off, I think, by kind of working with the landscape. Okay, so again, the examples that I was using would include a landscape that has some certain qualities to it. Okay, some thick lines. The further off in the landscape, the less detail there would be. The landscape that was in the foreground, like these rocks, for example, were pretty detailed for a comic. Okay, it's got these kind of faded colors, and let me see if I can find it. This is a good example of colors to use. Okay, so this is my inspiration. Probably something like this. What I want to find is a really good background image to use for my color and as a reference. So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm trying to find a good kind of reference image for my colors. I want something that looks somewhat similar to what the Martian landscape looked like in the movie. So I'm just looking to see if I can find that. You'll notice that I personally kind of do a lot of research for my projects. You may or may not do so much research, but that's just kind of, I'm a research-oriented person for sure. Not everyone's like that, though. I like this background. This background kind of seems to me to be kind of close to the color I think I'd be going for. Yeah, I thought I had, like I said, I came up with this idea last semester and I just wasn't able to finish it. I thought I had some good images. Let me see. Do I have that image still? I'm going to look. This. Okay, that's going to take a moment to download, so I'll keep looking here. I thought I had found like a perfect reference photo at one time, but when I look here, I'm just not seeing it. Maybe I'll find something here. This is a pretty good example of color. Snag this image. This one's a really good example, at least for the land part. I'll snag that one. Let's see what else we find here. It's a good example. Like the sky, though, I think this kind of yellowish sky works really well. If we look at the original sky, it is kind of yellow, but I really want to go for those like cartoonish kind of colors. So let's see here. This is a nice example of the sky here. Let's see, my file downloaded. Let's see what this had in it. This was the original one I started on and didn't finish, and I'm going to just start from the beginning again for our class. So see, I kind of had this kind of going on. Let's see what we have here. Okay, so I guess that's what I was using. Okay, well let me see. That's got some good colors in it too, I guess. I think I saw that image here. Let's just do another. Could have sworn it was a much better image though. Let's just go to this page. Okay, there's not a lot on this wiki, but okay, so that's enough. I've kind of got what I need. I like this image because I like the quality of the rocks there too. So I'll just grab these. These are my reference images for what I'm doing. And I'll kind of refer to those as I'm going through my steps. So I can just make a little group in here, reference images. Okay, and by naming them reference, I know that I'm not really using them in my image, but they're there to like peek at it anytime I want to. So let me just drop these guys in. Check, check, check. Check. Okay, so I have these images here. I'm just going to put them in my reference images folder, and I'll probably move that on top. So I can just turn on my originals folder and kind of still see what's going on with them. Okay, so I've got that one, and these are the ones that have some of the colors in it. Okay, so I've got my original. I think what I'm going to start off doing is working with the background. I want to get the background pretty close in quality to the rest of the cartoon. Okay, so I need to isolate the background. Let me just make a group for my background. Okay. And what I want to do is isolate the background and kind of get the Martian character out of here. Okay, so what I need to do is select my Martian, and I'll do that by, let's see, I'll just use a quick selection tool, I guess. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pen tool. I can make this a quick tutorial on how to use the pen tool for selections, because what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to find that there's multiple times that I need to make the same selection on my image. And what I can do with the pen tool is make a path for the selection, save it, and then be able to use that anytime later. Now, technically I could make a selection and use that selection anytime later, but I may find that having a path is useful. And plus, it'll be good for you guys to know this. So I'm just going to grab my pen tool here. And this works very much like the Illustrator pen tool if you've used Illustrator, but it's a little bit unique for Photoshop. So what you do with your pen tool is just go ahead and click on an area. Now I'm going to start off by clicking and dragging. And what that gives me is a couple of little handles here. And what that means is this point where I originally clicked and started to drag is going to be a curve. Okay, it's not going to be a hard corner, it's going to be a curve. So that's this point right here, and that's a curve. Okay, so I just went into my selection tool. I'm going to use my direct selection tool while I'm working with the pen tool, because that will let me have a little bit more control. So I'm just going to go to my next point and drag. And so I'm starting to create this outline with my pen tool around the outside of this helmet. Okay, now very much like in Illustrator, I've got this kind of curve going on here. If I want this to be a hard corner, I can just press Alt and then chain and then drag my handle, and it will make a corner kind of turn, and it will make it not be a curve anymore. Okay, so I can click, and I've got a curve happening when I drag, but I just press Alt. So I'll get the left side of this going correctly. Press Alt, and then I can point it straight up, because that's how this curve starts to happen here. Okay, and you'll notice this curve doesn't feel perfect here, and that's why I did the direct selection tool. I can go back, select this point, and adjust it. So the direct selection tool, it gives me this little white arrow. It's a little bit hard to see on your screen, versus the path selection tool, which selects the whole path. So I'm going to use the little white arrow, because then I can select individual points on the path and manipulate those individually, and that I can kind of refine my path in that way. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure that my path is kind of tracking at a good angle. It can be hard when you're zoomed in this much to know where the edge is, so you kind of, like, you'll notice that the pixels are dark here, they have a transition area, and then it gets to the background. So I usually try to go like towards the middle of the transition area because that kind of signifies where the edge is supposed to be. Sometimes if it's a darker edge, you can get it right along the edge, but it's hard getting a good selection sometimes. Okay, I can go back into my pen tool, and if I just click, oops, I'm going to click that to connect those. Now, if I just click, it will make a point. If I have my pen tool and I want to continue, I would click on this one, and then I can just click to continue. Now, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to drag when I click this time. I'm just going to click, and it makes a straight line, okay, from one point to another. So I've got a straight line there to here. Maybe this goes more like this. Okay, back into my line, straight over, up. And again, I'm on a curve, so I'll click and drag to start to make a curve here in the middle. Okay, so that curve on the left is kind of coming around nicely. My curve ends right here, so this is kind of an edge, but what I can do is select this one. So it makes the handles like the same distance from your middle point. So you have to go back with your individual selection tool, and you have to manipulate your handle sometimes. So I'll come back here, kind of fix this handle to be the right way. Maybe adjust this down a little bit. Okay, and this kind of is angled a little bit this way. Like that. Come in with my pen tool again, connect to my line. Oops. There we go. Kind of curving out a little bit here again. Okay, and so using those tools, you kind of just go around the edge of your drawing. Outlining it. Kind of helps that mine is fairly well defined. I'm switching between the pen tool and the selection tool by using P and A on my keyboard. These are my shortcuts. So I'm finding that that's not a good spot for the curve, so I'll just come up here. Oops. you don't need a curve, it is slightly quicker to just click between points. Okay, and then we come down kind of to here. You may choose to fast forward this part. You can kind of see what I'm doing here, but okay, so need to change. This one is currently a curve. I need to change it into a I'm kind of used to working with these in Illustrator. So what I need to do is change this one into an angle. So just with the pen tool, I can hold down Alt and click the handle, and that'll change it to an angle instead of a curve. Okay. Takes a little bit of finesse to get the curves perfect. Okay. So just going along the outside, obviously this takes a little bit of time. It's a little bit slow going, especially if there's like some small details in there. But you know, just sit back, relax, and do your selections. Learn the brush. Or learn the pen tool, I mean. And I get a feel for how it's working. Put on some music for myself here. You guys won't be hearing it, but let's see. Oh, you hear that, but you won't in a moment. It's not very relaxing Photoshop music. I'll skip that one. Okay. This method can take some time, but depending on your project, it's really worth it to have a nice selection that you can always come back to. Okay, and then I may use this path later since I'm doing something similar to a cartoon. I'll have this path, and what I might end up doing later is outlining the path, giving it a stroke, and that will give it this kind of cartoon-like line quality, possibly. I may or may not do that. Just depends. Just kind of refining my path as I go along. I would probably be better off there. What have I done here? Notice how it gets this minus symbol. That's that will actually delete the point you're working on if it's not the last point. If it's in between two other points, it'll delete it. So I obviously got a little bit ahead of myself somewhere along the way. Okay. I kind of do a somewhat faster version of this by just clicking. You don't get the curves in there, but when you're zoomed out, you may or may not notice it. Some of these edges, it won't matter later. This way is definitely faster. Almost got one arm done. Hopefully you fast forwarded through this part. You kind of get it. If you haven't, maybe you're just kind of working on your own thing and you've got this on in the background, which is fine. This gets a little bit complicated since it says internal parts, and honestly I'm not positive whether Photoshop will let me create a compound path, I think it's called, that subtracts out the inside of where these tubes come out from the suit. I don't know if it can or not, but I can adjust for that later. Oops. So a little contrast there is there. That would be a spot if I was using the auto selection tool. That would be really hard for Photoshop to see. Doesn't mean it couldn't be done. It's just the one thing that using the pen tool to make a selection is good for is a very precise and controlled selection. In this area, there's so little contrast that it might have trouble finding it. Excuse me for one moment. Hello? Okay, sales call. Should have known. Okay, finally kind of past the halfway mark. Almost there. I think after I'm done with this selection, I'll have to end my video for today, but we'll come back to it Thursday. I know a couple of you have watched my example video, so I think they're doing some kind of good. Is that part of the suit? I guess it is. Actually, I think it's part of this rope thing hanging down. I think I'm not going to include that. So should I include this gear hanging down? I guess I will, because it's kind of part of our space dude, our Martian. We'll include that. Quickly come around this thing. Should look up whether I can make a complex path and subtract stuff out of the middle. Well, there's a quicker, probably a quicker way of doing that I'll do later. The end is nigh. I can feel it. Almost back to the top. It's typical in Photoshop, though. You begin to do one little thing that seems easy, but it can take quite a while. Photoshop is absolutely magic. And when I say that, I say it because, and I may have said this before, when you talk to any magician about how they do a trick, oh hi, I've got a viewer. When you talk to, hello, Drips, when you talk to any magician about how they do a trick, I heard Penn and Teller, well, Penn, talk about this once. Penn Jillette. He said, once you know how a trick is done, it becomes very boring. It's kind of how Photoshop is. It takes work, but to the outside viewer, once it's done, it looks like magic. But it really is just a lot of work and detail that you maybe wouldn't think of. Let's see where I'm at. I think I want to delete this one. Yeah. Well, my one viewer left. I'm guessing that wasn't a student of mine. I don't think any of my students have viewed this live, which is fine. I didn't know I had all those points there in one place. Okay, pass the hand. Not my favorite song. Where's... Okay, very close to being done now. With the selection. So close. There it is. Okay, so I have my path now around my uh, character. Okay, so what I can do now that I have that path, if I go into my paths tab right here, it shows my work path. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to rename this path. I'm going to call this Martian Outer, because this is the outside path. It doesn't include these inside areas of background that's still left in this selection, but I'm going to call this Martian Outer. And then now, if I were to start making a new path with a pen, notice how it makes a new work path. What's going to happen is this path is going to be saved in my file, and I can always come back here to this paths and command click or right click on it and say make selection from this path. So I can make a selection. I can choose to feather it or not, and it selects. Ooh, I've got something weird going on here. Hold on. What is this? Is this an incomplete path? Oh, it is. See how my path right here is not all the way complete? There we go. So I just closed it. I saw this weird thing happening. I somehow did not, I skipped over some points of my path here, and it was not a closed path, so I want it to be closed. So now I can click on this, command click, and make a selection. And I'll make a selection around my Martian dude here. Okay. I might try to explore how to, let's see what these little tools say here. This is load path as a selection, stroke path with the brush, fill path with foreground color, add a layer mask, make a work path from the selection, right? So you can do a lot with this path, including making selections, which I'll probably get into on my next one. But basically now I have the ability to make a selection using the path, coming into my background layer, and just making a mask from that path. And notice how it isolates my guy here, and I can just invert this mask. And now on this layer I'll be working only with the background, and that's what I'm going to get into on my next video, is trying to give the background some quality. But that's the later portion of the video is how to use a pen tool. I'll cut that out and put it in as a tutorial, even though it's quite long. But this path will then be very useful for me probably later in this project. Okay, so I'm going to end the stream and the video for now. Let me know if you have any questions.